when was the first time when you started to find out about your love for creativity?
Well, I've thought about that a bit since I read your question. And I mean, I think it goes right back to the first things I can remember as a child. And I always remember seeing my mother darn socks and knit. And so I wanted to do that because she made something out of nothing. And my sisters embroidered. And they were always too busy. But the next door neighbour was a housekeeper for a gentleman. And she used to come in and said, oh, you can come round with me. I'll show you how to embroider. I'll show you how to knit. And so she taught me how to do all these sort of crafts. And I can remember doing that at the ages of 6, 7, 8. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was always interested in colour. I always remember if they gave me a little chart to work from, I'd change the colours. And they said, why have you changed the colours? I said, well, I think mine are better. Mm-hmm. They weren't always, but they were mine. Mm-hmm. And I felt it was important to put your own colour in.
Absolutely.
So quite early.
Considering the background you grew up, which is maybe seen as a working class background,
yes.
Was it easy to express yourself freely?
In our environment, it was, yes, because remember, I was brought up. How old was I when the war started? I was 6 when the war started. Mm-hmm. So, from 6 until 12, there was a war going on. So it was make, do, amend. And so people had darn socks and make carpets from old clothes, pegged rugs and things like that. So I learned I loved doing all those things.
When did you take it was a passion, you said that. When did you take it serious enough to really make it as a profession?
Well, I went to an ordinary school and I was told I wasn't bright enough to get to grammar school in those days. I was a late developer. But basically, looking back now, I realised I was dyslexic and nobody picked up on it because in those days they didn't. You were just thought to be slow learning. And my father had a retail coal business, quite a successful one, in that he had 4 or 5 men working for him and 2 or 3 lorries. And I didn't know what to do, so he said I could work for him. He thought eventually I would take over the business. Mm-hmm. There was no way I was going to take over a coal business, no way. But it gave me time, and I suddenly realised working for him, it's physical labour, and therefore you can have flights of fantasy all day because you've got nothing really intellectual to think about. So I used to think about what I was going to create, what I was going to make in art college in the evening. And I used to go to art college in the evening, and then from one night a week, it came 4 nights a week. And then one day the principal of the art college came and said, John, every lecturer that's done any work with you say you should be here full time. Well, I mean, it was wonderful because that's what I'd want to do on leaving college. I wanted to go to art college, but my parents taught me out of it. I needed to get a trade. Mm. And so I said to him, well, I've always wanted to come to art college, but how can I start a new career at the age of 27? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, you've got no career. If you come, we will pay all your fees for you and we will pay your travel expenses. All you've got to do is keep yourself for a year. At the end of a year, you'll get your exams and I will guarantee you will get them. Mm-hmm. And we will get your major county award. That's a regional award. So I took him at his word. I persuaded my parents to keep me for a year and I went to college. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and then I applied from the small provincial college. I applied for 2 London colleges. Well, I didn't know you can't apply for 2 London colleges. Well, you can, but you're not supposed to. You apply for 1. That's called first choice. Mm-hmm. And then your second choice is a lesser prestigious college. Mm-hmm. But I thought, I don't want to go to a less prestigious college. I either want to go to one of the best, or I don't want to go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's another side to me, I suppose. And so I applied for 2. Fortunately, the first one I went to obviously liked my folder of work and liked me. And they said, you're going to Central St Martin's, which today is probably the most prestigious college in England.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they said, you're going to Central St Martin's. And if we offered you a place today, would you not go? So I said, if you offer me a place today, I won't go. So they offered me a place. Now that's against the law. They're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to see everybody and then offer the places. So having gone into teaching, I realised now that was very unethical. So they must have wanted me really badly.
Wow, yeah.
So that, looking back now, I didn't know, obviously, at the time. So I went to Camberwell and I did my my first degree in woven and printed textiles. And then I won a scholarship to the Royal College of Art where I did woven and knitted textiles. So I think I'm quite a rarity in that I've got a degree in all the areas of textiles, printing, weaving and knitting. And that certainly played in my favour for the rest of my freelance, because I could freelance in any of those areas.
I get the impression that you have been always very conscious and very
Very
conscious
Yes.
about what you want, and very straight and clear,
Yeah.
and very focused.
Yes.
Is that the right impression?
Yes, it is. But I mean, I find it amazing when people tell me this, but I have to agree, yes, I have. And I think in the beginning, more so than later on. And it was just instinctive. I remember my best friend at college saying to me, you know, you actually are talking as though you're at the Royal College, but you've only applied, you may not get in. What are you going to do if you don't get in? And I remember saying, don't be foolish, of course I'm going to get in.
But you did.
And then after he told me that, I suddenly thought, oh my God, suppose I don't get in. What am I going to do? I've made no other plans. All my plans are going to the Royal College and developing from there. It never entered my head I would not get in.
Amazing.
Because I thought, I knew I was better than anybody else in my field at that college. And that college always got people into the Royal College of Art. Therefore I had to go. I suppose it was because remember I'm 10 years older at this point than any other student. All the other students are 20 and I'm 30. Well, I'm 27. So at that moment, I'd persuaded the professor to allow me to cut the course by a year. I'd said to him, look, I'm mature, I work twice as hard as the other students, and I can do this course in a year, in 2 years instead of 3. Will you let me cut a year out?
Wow, yeah.
And he was a very enlightened man, and he said, I think you can actually do it, John. Talk to everybody, but you do realise what you're doing is you won't get a first-class honours degree. You'll get maybe just a pass. And I said to him, but when you've left college, nobody asks you what degree you got. All they want to know is, can we see your folder of work?
Yeah.
And he burst out laughing. And he said, you're absolutely right.
Did you have some self-doubts about yourself also? Do you know self-doubts?
I had no self-doubt about what I was doing and where I was going, because I knew that I had something other than talent, which is really important. And that's one of the things I've always told my students that when I taught at the Royal College. You now are all above average. To have got to the Royal College, you have to be very good, artistically, creatively. But what is going to signal out the ones that are going to make it in this group of students? Do you have tenacity? Do you have staying power? Can you work hard? Can you delegate your time? And do you, most of all, have people skills? Well, I knew I had all those 5 things. So what I lacked, maybe in creativity compared to the other students, was cancelled out totally by me having these other things. And I knew that. And so I was never able to assess my artistic creativity. Because I was with very creative people at the Royal College, and I was with a senior tutor who didn't like me, and with tutors who I got a lot out of but never had a real rapport with, like I had in my first college. And so I never ever really understood how good I was creatively. Mm-hmm. So I always had doubts in that area.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But I never had any doubts about where I was going and I would make it. But whether I was going to be really successful or not, I didn't know, because I couldn't assess myself artistically, because the people I was being trained with didn't really like my approach.
But you said I was always sure about where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
What was that?
I wanted to actually produce beautiful fabrics. And if I could sell them to the best clients in the world, that was fine. But I knew if I did that, I would never be famous, because textile designers sell their products to the couture houses. And although I sold work to Valentino, Chanel, all those kind of couture houses, my name never went on anything.
I see.
Oh, the only way I knew they bought the fabrics, because the companies never told me,
Mm-hmm.
was that when I saw a photograph in the paper of a coat and thought, that's my fabric. And I used to walk down Oxford Street and suddenly see a woman in a suit in one of mine, and I used to walk behind her for maybe 100 yards looking at it.
Wow.
That was really thrilling.
But you just talked about if you go that way, what you chose, I'm not going to be famous. So my question would be, what means fame to you? And how important is it, maybe?
Fame is when people recognize you for what you do.
But you can have that in a very small circle, too.
But I didn't want a small circle.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be big.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, then you realise it's meaningless.
Meaningless?
It is really.
Explain that, please.
Because basically, fame is an illusion. In that fame, I mean, the Jonathan Anderson bag collection, the first collection that went under John Allen for Loewe, I mean, it was in every decent fashion magazine, certainly in China, Japan, America and England. Mm. And I was interviewed by maybe 100 different publicists. But it was boring. They all asked the same questions, and I suddenly realised the people who were interviewing me weren't that well informed, not very well educated. They just could write a nice line in words. Mm. So that put that into perspective for me. And I also realised that it's not fame, it's having your creativity recognised. Mm-hmm. Can you segregate the two things? Like for me, seeing what Loewe had done with my design to put it into a bag, and for me to be given the credit for that design, was far more important than the actual publicity in the papers and the magazines and all that. Yeah. It was just that I actually glowed inside, because suddenly all the things that people had put me down for, I remember being told, well, your colour's very weak. And I realise now my colour is actually incredibly strong, yeah. But it is different. And if people can't recognise that I'm using colour in original ways, then they don't like it. And I was put down for that for years and years. It's only since I started doing the carpets, I actually realised I can use colour really well. And not only that, I can do something that lots of people can't do, and that is I can use any combination of colours well, because of my training in the textile trade. When you're doing fabrics for fashion changes, the colour changes every 3 months. So I had to change. And if I didn't like bright colours and they were in fashion, I had to use them. Mm-hmm. And so it made me learned how to use colour, and I always had this incredible love for it. Like, I mean, I love my garden at the front at the moment because I went to a special dahlia specialist flower grower, and I took one of every dahlia I could find, and they're all in the garden. And I mean, it's a real hodgepodge of colour, but I love that because nature gets away with things that we can't get away with. And I'm trying to work out, how is it that those dahlias all look great together, but if I put those colours together in a design, they wouldn't work. And I've worked out it's all about proportion. It's not about the colours. It's how much of that colour you put in with the other colours. And that's very difficult. You cannot teach it.
You said you have had self-doubts because of criticisms
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with those critics, and how did it affect you?
It affected me in that it made me unsure about the way I use colour. It undermined my confidence. But because I was, as a weaver and knitter, I was technically very clever. I learned more about the technical side of knitting and weaving than any other designer I know. And that's why I could go to a factory, and when the technician said, oh, we can't do that, I could turn around and say, well, I'm sorry, I can do it on your machine. And that's just a natural thing. But it undermined I didn't think I was as sensitive to colour as I really am. They undermined that. So for years, I thought that I had to work very hard to get good colour combinations. And now I know I don't have to work hard. I just have to do what my heart tells me, and I can make it work. Like I've just said about those dahlias, it's all about quantities of colour and also mixing colour. It's no you're getting colours out of paint pots. They're done by somebody else. You've got to learn to mix them. I mean, I tell the students on education, when I did a colourway for one of my carpets, I wanted to do a pastel carpet. And I had to paint, the design was 4 inches square. And I remember painting it out 32 times because I couldn't get the right pink. But then when I got it, and I was thrown to bits, and then I didn't use it. But I was so pleased because I got that pink right. I'm a practicing Christian, and I know I don't talk about this because I think it sounds really, I don't know if it sounds pretentious or simple-minded or the opposite, but I go out and I look at trees and the sun, and I am full of the joy of God's creation. Landscapes and cityscapes and seascapes take my breath away, and they change all the time. I mean, the sea particularly is, I mean, you could spend a lifetime just painting if you wanted to. And so, I mean, I'm not that way inclined, but I do really look at the way colours change. It's something, and as I've got older, it's got more and more so. And like I was saying, that those dahlias in the garden have taught me that really you can use any colours together. There's no such thing as that they don't go together. It's how you use them in the proportion. And so I've learnt something in the last 2 weeks, so I'm going to practice it now.
Do you think there is an inner calling, an inner calling in you to do that, what you do?
Oh gosh, yes. Well, I wouldn't call it an inner calling. I actually believe very deeply that we're all given talents. And one of our jobs in life is that we use the talents God's given us to the best of our ability. And if you ask me what my aim was, my aim is to use the abilities God gave me to the best of my abilities. And that's one reason why, at the age of 82, I'm still teaching. Because I have an ability to teach. I love teaching, and my students love being taught by me. And whenever I have that gift, and whenever people come and want to be taught, I will do it. if I get bored, or if I find that I suddenly fall out of love with teaching, I'll stop immediately.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, even Itil Adnan got very famous in her 90s. So you might say it's never too late.
No, I don't think it is. And also too, the fulfillment of your vacation may not come in the way that you expect it to. Like, it doesn't always come with fame. It doesn't always come with wealth. It may come with just total personal fulfillment. It might come with fame and that. It might come with that, fame and wealth. But nobody can tell you how that's going to come. I mean, look at the famous fashion designers. They are all flawed. I don't know one that has not been flawed. Let's take recent examples of John Galliano, McQueen, Yves Saint Laurent, all tortured souls. Mainly because they burnt themselves out.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because do you think living your passion makes you a happy person? Or a
There's a lot of provisos there. Like, I think living your passion can actually fulfill you and give you happiness, but only if you're not sacrificing or destroying other things on the way. I mean, fashion designers destroy people on the way up. All of them do it because they're so driven, and they have to be so focused because they're producing. Imagine somebody producing 10 fashion collections a year. What time is there for anything else? So they have to have a whole body of people around them to support them. Now, those people are treated like dirt often because they don't have time to cultivate them. I mean, most of them have a right-hand person who they carry with them, but nearly all of them get jettisoned somewhere near the top.
Yes.
And that's terrible for the person and terrible for the famous person, because they have to carry that baggage with them. They've done that damage. And I believe in this life, you can do anything you want and God will forgive you. The one thing he won't forgive, if you damage another human being.
Yes.
And I mean damage, if you do the mental damage, that's almost worse than physical damage. Because physical damage can be repaired, mental damage can't.
Working as an artist, as a designer, for sure did change your way of thinking, of perceiving.
Maybe it's made me able to become much more focused. I have quite a low threshold of boredom, and sometimes I would move around between lots of different things. And as I got older, like now, for the last 20 years, I've concentrated on only making carpets for my creative outlet. And I think because of that, the work has improved and improved. Before that, I was spreading myself too thinly over knitting, weaving, writing, all those things.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me, that's what you already told me, because I find that so amazing that you very consciously play with your accent, and why?
I can't bear snobbery, and I don't like being put down like anybody, nobody does. But I'm in a position not to care anymore. I'm 82, for goodness sake, and I'm successful in what I do. I've got a nice lifestyle. So why do I have to pretend? I come from a working class background, but I'm very successful. I'm acceptable in most circles. So why hide anything? And it would take a lot of effort to get rid of my accent. Why would I waste that emotional, physical energy when I can put it into creative things? It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. And I'm very conscious at 82, time's running out. I haven't got time for that nonsense. And you're right, I only live for today because I've had cancer 3 times, and last year I had melanoma 3 times. Mm-hmm. So that's 6 times. Well, I'm very lucky God's let me live for this long. And I mean, when I went 10 years ago, when I had my stomach cancer, then I was given 2 days to live. But here I am, you know, doctors aren't gods.
Yeah, and you accepted it. That was maybe the key.
Yeah.
You didn't fight it?
No.
You accepted it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You have to.
Yeah. Yeah, but most people fight it. I mean.
Well, I mean, I fought the cancer. I mean, you know, I was determined. I mean, I lay in bed one night. I always remember this. I lay in bed one night, and I must have been smiling. And I was checked up every 2 hours. A nurse would come and check me all over. I was so ill. Went on for weeks. And she came, she said, you know, every time I've come to wake you up, you've been smiling tonight. And, I mean, you haven't smiled for a long time. And I said, no, I've just realised tonight I can't die. And she said, what do you mean you can't die? Because I was still seriously ill. And I said, I can't possibly die. I said, I'm lying here thinking I've got Hindus, Muslims, Christians, non-believers, Jews, agnostics, and they're all lighting candles for me to get better. If I die, I'm going to destroy the faith of all these different people. And she rolled with laughter and she said, I can understand why you're smiling. I said, so I can't die, you see.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I want to say thank you for that lovely interview.
Oh, that's right.
And
You
for
gave me
answering-
flowers. That's thank you. No.
And for answering that question so honestly. Well, I mean, that's so